Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're jumping right into a remarkably raw text simply titled Judgment. We're going to break this piece down together to map out the exact psychological anatomy of what it actually feels like to be on the receiving end of harsh external perceptions. We have all been there, right? But we rarely see the experience dissected quite this clearly. Okay, let's dive right into this really arresting opening image. The text doesn't actually start with emotions, it starts with physics. Judgment is described as felt sound waves hitting surface, full of stories and perceptions. Think about how wild that is. Seeing judgment hit us as a visceral, almost physical force before we even have the chance to process it mentally. It's a literal impact, a collision between what others think and the surface of who we are. Section 1. The physicality of judgment. We begin our thematic descent into the text by looking closely at this immediate bodily shock. The author translates abstract poetry into a very concrete reality here. Judgment is a physical force with, quote, no flexibility and no kindness. When those sound waves of judgment strike, they don't bend. They don't care about your context or your backstory. They just hit with absolute rigidity. It's a blunt force, entirely devoid of empathy. And the immediate result of that blunt force is an overwhelming paralysis. Because of the fear of embarrassment, the text says, all questions hit me at once. You know that feeling, right? When you feel judged, you don't just face one single critique. Your brain floods with literally every possible insecurity at the exact same time. And the sheer volume of those thoughts effectively just takes you away from the present moment. Section 2. Losing our autonomy. Let's see how this builds from a physical hit into a hostile takeover of our internal independence. The crucial turning point hits right here. My feelings sold my autonomy, followed by the absolute gut punch of a line, my being replaces my doing. This is so important. This is when the psychological attack stops being about an action you performed, what you do, and suddenly completely overshadows your entire identity, who you are. You aren't just a person who made a mistake anymore. In the face of harsh judgment, you suddenly become the mistake itself. This massive shift in identity leads directly into a total loss of autonomy. The victim confesses to being enslaved by others' views, enchanted by their spell. It's fascinating language, really. Judgment is framed almost like dark magic that leaves a person entirely powerless. There isn't much left inside. There's no power to hold on to your core. The external voices just get so incredibly loud that your own internal voice is completely silenced. Section 3. The deep inner conflict. Once autonomy is stripped away and the core is left unprotected, the result is a severe internal spiral. This isn't just about feeling a little sad or down. The psychological weight literally invades your rest. It manifests as lost sleep and night terrors, making waking hours incredibly hard to bear and leaving the individual feeling profoundly unmoored. The text describes feeling lost in the streets and forgotten even by the wind. It's a total isolating exhaustion. From this exhaustion, a hopelessly fragmented self emerges, with me judging me. You see, the external judgment becomes internalized, leaving you horribly torn. One side of you says move, the other side says stay. One side wants to be totally forgotten and erased, while the other desperately wants to be present. It's an agonizing paralysis born completely from self-surveillance. Amidst feeling completely lost, wandering those metaphorical streets, the search begins for a way out. The individual is looking to find their true nature and looking to find new nurture. It's a desperate, scrambling attempt to rediscover an authentic baseline, a true nature, and find an environment that actually feeds the soul rather than constantly tearing it down. Section 4. Judgment versus accountability. Here is where we step back to observe the broader picture of how life judges us from head to toe, prompting a really vital intellectual pivot. Life often makes assumptions based on prediction. And why this matters so deeply is because it shifts the focus away from personal failure. The realization hits, it has nothing to do with values. It has everything to do with freedom. When people judge based on predictive assumptions, they aren't actually evaluating your morality. They're actively restricting your freedom to be complex, to grow, and to change. This beautifully captures the core thesis of the entire text. There is a profound, life-altering difference between toxic judgment and responsible accountability. There's a huge difference between making harsh, restrictive assumptions and the vital act of choosing life carefully. You see, accountability asks you to be responsible for your actions. Judgment, on the other hand, simply condemns your existence. Let's just pause for a second and let the weight of this direct inquiry sit with you. The text turns the mirror around and asks us to deeply examine ourselves. What emotion is triggered in my judgmental moments? It forces us to ask what unrealistic expectations of life we are clinging to when we evaluate others or even when we're questioning ourselves. It's a really powerful call for self-awareness. Section 5. Protecting the authentic self. Finally, we arrive at the ultimate consequence of confronting these expectations in our daily world. This entire intense psychological struggle is grounded in an undeniable, broader context. We live in an unjust society where moments of tomorrow become today. This isn't happening in a vacuum, you know? Society constantly throws these mocking sound waves our way, forcing the individual to react and adapt just to get by. Because those sound waves are absolutely relentless, and because society can be incredibly unjust, the individual is forced into a bittersweet, deeply self-protective act. To survive the onslaught without totally breaking down, you have to deploy a defense mechanism. That tragic but necessary defense mechanism is to close the doors to your inner authentic self. It's a really heavy armor to wear. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this one thought to chew on. If closing the doors to our inner, authentic self is the only way to survive the relentless judgment of others, what happens to the person locked inside?